To this discussion now, fears of instability linked to the upcoming elections could once again affect businesses. It comes as many are still recovering from the COVID-19 lockdowns. You'll recall the 2021 July unrest, including the natural disasters that we have seen. Let's talk now about the lessons learnt, particularly from the upheavals like the July 2021 unrest. And we are joined in studio by the South African Special Risk Insurance Association CEO, Mpumi. Tyikwe. Mr. Tyikwe, good evening to you.
Good evening, Butoli. Good evening to your viewers as well.
Thank you for making the time to join us in studio.
It's only a pleasure. It's only a pleasure.
Let's look back to the July unrest. A number of businesses were affected during that time. Take us back, if you have a collective figure in mind, of just how many businesses were affected and, more importantly, how many put claims forward, which nearly caused you to go belly up.
Actually, we did go belly up. So let's get that out of the way fairly quickly. We did go belly up, and it was thanks to the South African taxpayer that injected 22 billion rands. So National Treasury gave us a bailout of 22 billion rands so that we can stay afloat and be able to meet those claims. So to answer your first question, in terms of economic loss, it's estimated at 50 billion rands. Of those 50 billion rands of claims, SASRIA covered 31 billion rands of them, 31.5 billion rands to be precise. And it involved about 18,000 claims that we received, which is about 7 times the normal average we'll get in 1 year. So it was quite significant from that point of view. But also, I think I need to remind you as well that there was a significant loss of life.
Yeah.
Over 350 South Africans lost their lives due to that particular unrest. So it's not something I think as South Africans would want to repeat anytime soon.
Yeah. If indeed the country were to see another upheaval, possibly to the same scale, what's the state of preparedness, and what would the advice be to businesses so that they're able to insulate themselves, if they can, against such?
Look, I think before we get there, we need to say what's the likelihood of something going very wrong. The way business can protect itself, they have to take SASRIA insurance cover. And for those large businesses, they can go into the Lloyd's London. But as you know, globally, there are more than 60 elections going on this year, involving about half the world's population. So to get cover in the UK market at Lloyd's of London for this type of risk at this time of the year, it's a bit challenging. So it's going to be quite expensive and so on. So the first thing is to say, let's take insurance. But for me, it's whether there is a probability that this could happen again, and the preparedness that South Africa has for it. So in an election year, this is our 7th elections in a democracy. That is national and provincial elections. We've looked back in the last 6 we've had. And generally, SASRIA did well financially in those years than any other years. Except for 1 year, which was 2019, where we had the xenophobic attacks. So the claims were not related to the elections per se, they were related to the xenophobic attacks. Now, fast forward to these current elections, which some people are dubbing their new 1994, I guess Y2Ks. Those are those who will say that. But generally, when we look at it, is that I think the government is quite aware of what happened in July 2021. And all the necessary steps are being taken to avert us going there. So, for instance, the security cluster is starting rolling out its plans. The president issued another statement today talking about the readiness for us to hold elections. Our discussions with the security cluster as well demonstrate that they are more prepared. There are, of course, certain areas of the country where you could say maybe we might experience a problem and you need to deploy your resources in those particular areas. Generally, though, I think the elections will go well given our history and the state of preparedness, plus the fact that we shouldn't have any reasons to doubt the credibility and the ability of the IEC to run good elections.
You've given me an excuse to pry even further now. You're saying that you have had discussions with the security cluster.
Yeah.
The kinds of discussions that take place there, what discussions are you having, particularly around anything that could go wrong around elections? You're saying that you have looked back at previous elections.
Yeah.
Perhaps talk about the trends as well that you've observed in order to prepare yourself.
Look, basically the sort of information we are able to provide is where do we see, from a claims point of view, the hotspots. Yeah. So we can tell where most claims are likely to happen. So let me give you an example. Yeah. If it involves trucks, it's likely it's going to be on the N3. We've had less claims on the N1 going down to Cape Town, or even from Mosina to Cape Town, or the N12 that is through Kimberley to Cape Town. So you know it's the entry, and you know that it's your Moy River Plaza. That's where normally it has started the 4 times we've experienced it before. So if you're going to allocate resources, then you need to say, where is it most likely to happen? Yeah. And you start that, and that should inform your deployment strategy. Obviously, there are other discussions that I'm not privy to because, you know, of their sensitive nature. But I'm confident that all the necessary measures are being taken to make sure that it does not happen. I want to take you back, for instance, to the national shutdown we had in March 20th, last year, right. The EFF national shutdown. If you were to look at how those were handled, and the fact that we didn't have any, the people marched freely in various parts of the country, and there was no damage at all to speak of. It showed the state of preparedness of the security cluster to respond to such challenges. So the elections shouldn't be any different, in my view.
All right. So we are assured that we are going to have a smooth election period.
As I said, there will be certain areas where it will be bumpy, but I think as South Africans, as we've shown, some of you don't remember 1994. I remember it quite well. Yeah. There were people who were holding food, buying this and doing that, think that things are going to go horribly wrong. Here we are, 30 years later. So another 30 years, people will be having a similar conversation. We should be okay.
I'm going to get you into trouble. You talk about hotspots.
Yeah.
Are you able to share with us which are these, or is that privileged information?
Look, it's privileged information, but you are in the media. I mean, people can hazard a guess as to where you are likely to experience problems. Okay, let's go back to July 2021. Let's talk about what we know. Yeah. Of the 31.5 billion rands of claims we received, 80% came from KwaZulu-Natal. All right? And the rest came from Gauteng. Yeah. The rest of the country, nothing happened. What stopped that unrest? Less to do with the deployment of the army, which was deployed like 5 days later, but it was communities saying, guys, we cannot be destroying our country. So I'm putting trust back in the South African community to say, they're not going to want to see South Africa being destroyed. Yeah. Because we need this country to function to deal with some of the challenges that we have. So that's what happened in July 2021. And as you can see, generally, I mean, you are an observer of this. You can see where the areas of tensions are. And more, that's where you need to deal with this situation. So KwaZulu-Natal, in our view, is going to be an area that I think we need to look at and manage it in a mature way so that we do not see a repeat of any form of political violence that might lead to a loss of life or damage to property.
As we wrap up, key lessons from that period of July 2021, and couple that with what sort of claims could not be paid out.
Look, currently, I mean, I've just done road shows here in Johannesburg and in KwaZulu-Natal, where we are telling brokers about what SASRIA can offer. So some of the key lessons that we established, 40% of South African businesses who can afford SASRIA cover, because it's quite affordable. You have SASRIA cover, it does not cost you more than a cup of coffee per year. That's the cost of it. For a business, you are looking at about 400 rands per annum. You know, small businesses that operate in a mall. So it's not it's a quite accessible product. So people should take that insurance. For big business, though, the message that I have is that we need to reassure South Africans that these elections are going to come well. So big business need to invest in campaigns that will let South Africans know that whatever the outcome of those elections are, they are credible. That's because what's going to create violence is when people do not accept the outcome of the results. So we have to invest in making sure that that process is credible. And how do we do that? We know the IEC is going to do a fantastic job. We know that in each voting station there will be party agents that will be monitoring and counting the votes and so on. Yeah. And as business, we can put on additional observers. We can put out statements where we assure our employees and the communities that we operate in that, you know, these elections were credible. And we leave the politicians to sort out whatever the outcome of the elections will be.
Mpumi Tyikwe, let me thank you very much for your time making it to studio here. Really appreciate that. And we hope to bring you back, perhaps, on the back of the elections to pontificate.
Exactly, yeah.
How well the country has handled the election period. Thank you very much for your time, sir. I'm going to ask you to just remain seated for a moment while I link to another story. Mpumi Tyikwe is the CEO of SASRIA.